Hey everyone, welcome to the PCS-Proof Podcast, where we're covering the vital things you need to know to thrive in every season of military life. I'm your host and milspouse fitness expert, Grace Barnick-Damazo, and I encourage you to join me each week as we dive deep into topics like fitness, wellness, and entrepreneurship as a military spouse so that you can maintain your own sense of identity and purpose, conquering every transition with strength and resilience. As we journey together, you can expect uplifting conversations and insights. We'll share some laughs, and you can count on me to keep it real so that together we can become truly PCS-proof. Now let's get into it. Welcome back to the PCS-Proof Podcast. It's been a crazy week over here on my side of the world. My husband just recently got back from an underway, and most of you guys can probably understand or empathize with how difficult those first few weeks are, either, coming back from a deployment or detachment, TDY, any of those first 2 weeks when they leave and those first 2 weeks when they come back are always really tough. Everything just feels like it's kind of up in the air again, and you're trying to reestablish new routines. So it's just been kind of a crazy week. And on top of that, my allergies have been just nuts this week. So I feel like I'm sick, like I have a sore throat, but I know it's just the allergies and it's just that season. But they really hit me a lot harder than I'm used to. So I've just been trying to deal with that. And that meant that recording this episode happened a little bit later in the week. And normally my natural tendency is to put so much pressure on myself to be on this strict schedule and get it out on the same day every single week. But, I'm really just trying to practice what I preach and be understanding and give myself a little bit of grace and know that I'm going to get this podcast done. It's going to get out to you. You guys are going to be so patient and lovely about it. And you're probably not even going to realize that this is coming out a little bit late. So thank you for being so understanding. But yeah, I'm just trying to be over here and practice exactly what I preach, which is be flexible, be adaptable. You're still going to get it all done. It's still all going to happen. Just some weeks are going to be more chaotic than others. I also have something that I wanted to tell you. When I was recording my very first episode of this podcast, and I shared with you a little bit about my personal story, I told you briefly about this codependent relationship that I'd been in after college. And I was listening back to the episode and I realized I forgot to share with you something really important, which is that this partner that I was mentioning, unfortunately, was dealing with alcohol addiction and some substance abuse issues. And I feel like it's really important to share with you, not because, it has anything to do with that other person, but one, if you have also had to deal with a partner or a family member or someone in your life who struggles with this disease, then you might be able to relate with how chaotic and how unstable it can make your own life. And number two, even if you haven't had to deal with that in your life, for those of us in military life, I think you'll really be able to relate to this. For me, I remember that this time in my life felt so unstable. For me, it felt like I was seriously on one side of this giant waterbed and someone was standing on the other side of the waterbed, controlling the frequency of the waves, controlling the size of these undulations on this really unstable surface. And that whole time, I was just trying to use all my energy and my focus to really stabilize against these huge waves and just try and catch my breath in between the waves, bracing for that next series of waves coming at me. And that sounds a lot like how it feels in military life sometimes, right? Super out of control, and we're just bracing ourselves for that next wave. What's coming next? And when we're in a state of this constant bracing, even when the waves start to get a little bit smaller and we start to feel like we're regaining our balance and our sense of stability, then another wave comes and throws our stability out of whack again. And when I was going through dealing with that relationship, I started to see a therapist, and she introduced me to this concept of stable rocks, or finding your stable rocks. And it really helped me to regain some sense of control when the waves kept coming. And it helps me now, even as I navigate these roller coasters of military life, which is why I've been really looking forward to sharing this concept with you. I'm going to be sharing with you this super simple but massively impactful concept of finding your stable rocks. And I'm going to teach you the techniques that you need to start incorporating them right now and how to lean into them when the waves start to come more frequently or they start to get a little bit bigger. This is such an actionable topic. I need to take a really quick break, but I want you to stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss this, okay? I'll be right back. Hey, fellow milspouse. Ever felt the frustration of being forced to restart your fitness routine every time military life throws you a curveball? Whether it's a PCS, a deployment, or a short-term assignment, disruptions can make progress feel nearly impossible. But now there's a solution designed just for you. The PCS-Proof fitness program from FitPath Coaching. Designed by a woman in military life, for women in military life. It's flexible, adaptable, and affordable. No more setbacks or starting over, just steady progress on your terms. Visit fitpathcoaching.com/PCS-Proof-fitness to start your journey today. And as a special offer for our podcast listeners, get your first month free with promo code POD4FREE. That's POD, the number 4, FREE. Say goodbye to stress and frustration and hello to a stronger, healthier, happier you with PCS-Proof Fitness. Join us today and get ready to conquer any challenge military life sends your way. PCS-Proof Fitness, join today. So I've introduced you to this concept of stable rocks, but you're probably wanting to hear a little bit more, so let's go ahead and start right there. What is a stable rock? A stable rock is a practice that adds something reliable to your life when it feels like things are spinning out of control. These are things that you can control that keep you anchored when the waves of life are crashing around you, and it helps you feel more stable in the midst of the chaos. And having these stable rocks is super important because studies have shown that there's a correlation between perceived control and improved mental health in high stress situations. So having something to keep you feeling really stable improves our mental well-being and our perception of how much control we have over chaotic situations. And you could just imagine how different it would feel if you were like in a ship being tossed around by the waves versus feeling anchored in place when the waves are crashing around you. It's not ignoring what's happening around you, but the sense of having a little bit of stability or control enhances our feelings of autonomy. And that's also been shown in studies to reduce stress. And how often do we talk about our lack of control within our lives in the military world? All the time, right? So you can probably see how this is applicable to us and how the sooner we find out what our stable rocks are and we start to lean into them, the more in control and the less stressed we will feel. So let's do that all together right now. We want to first start by identifying what are our stable rocks. So I have a few questions for you that will help you at least start to identify those core practices that you can rely on and that make you feel stable and solid and a little bit less stressed. So here they are. Are you ready? I want you to first reflect back on your past experiences. What has consistently brought you peace or stability in the past? What activities have consistently brought you peace or joy in the past? So think back to a time in the past when you felt most grounded. What are some of those things that you were doing that most likely contributed to that feeling? All right, so that's the first question that I have for you. Reflect on the past. Now I want you to think about your current routines, what's happening right now, and what habits or practices make you feel grounded daily. And even if you're out of practice with this right now, what are some of the habits or routines that you know really work for you in the recent past? It doesn't have to be complicated or huge. Like sometimes the things that are the most simple, things like making your bed, can really work. And I know that for me, even though I hate washing dishes, I really hate washing the dishes. I love it when my husband's home because he loves washing the dishes. But the sense of calm that I feel when I walk into a clean kitchen is well worth the effort of making sure that the dishes are done every night so that in the morning I walk in and the kitchen is nice and clean and fresh, and it just makes me feel more motivated to cook healthy meals and just be in the kitchen. So for me, cleaning the dishes, even though I hate it, could be one of my stable rocks. And then I want you to start creating a really simple checklist. Write down the daily activities and assess how they impact your emotional well-being. And you can start to highlight or circle those things that make you feel less stressed, more relaxed, maybe more energized or more empowered. So that's another technique that you could use, is just start writing down, what do I do on a daily basis? And then really evaluate what things are really adding energy and peace and relaxation to my life, rather than making me feel more anxious, more stressed. And you may even want to ask a close friend, ask a family member that you really trust, who can offer insights on what you're really good at. What are your strengths? Those might be some of your stable rocks. In my experience, we tend to hyper-focus on the things that we're not good at, rather than leaning into our strengths and what we are good at. And it can be really valuable to get some unbiased feedback, to uncover some of those blind spots that we might have for ourselves and highlight those unrecognized strengths. Maybe you're really good at creating connections with people. So maybe one of your stable rocks could have something to do with initiating a meetup or some sort of monthly game night in your community, and that could be one of your stable rocks when things start to feel really chaotic. Maybe one of your strengths is creativity, and one of your stable rocks could have something to do with that creativity. So once you have your list of things that could be your stable rocks, I want you to start narrowing down that list. Remember, we've talked about how if everything is important, then nothing is important. This is where this comes in. We need to narrow it down. So I want you to try and refine your list of your stable rocks into maybe like 3 to 5 things. 3 to 5 things that make the most impact on your life right now. And recognize that these things are going to change over time. Priorities shift. So you may want to come back to this list periodically and check in with yourself and understand what truly matters to you right now. But for now, just try and narrow it down to 3 to 5 things that make the biggest difference in your current state, in your current part of your journey. Also, I'm not the expert on this because I don't have kids, but I can imagine doing some kind of activity like this, identifying the stable rocks for your kids, would be pretty dang valuable to them as well. I'm aware of the importance of stability for child development. So if we have this method that's been shown to reduce stress and improve mental well-being for ourselves, I can only imagine how that might transfer to kids as well, right? So parents, you can let me know. And once we have our list of our 3 to 5 stable rocks that are going to impact our life right now, we need to start implementing them. So having that checklist or a tracker would be a great thing to implement, just at least to start, especially when we're first starting or when our life is feeling particularly chaotic. Finding a printable free checklist with some cute, fun stickers, markers, pens, whatever you like, to make it really appealing to start to track and establish a habit of implementing our stable rocks would be a great way to start. There's so many super aesthetic habit trackers out there that you could find something that you really like and that's very appealing. But remember that part of being PCS-proof, part of that PCS-proof method is not getting too caught up on the tools or the stuff. So don't wait until you have that cute tracker to get started. Get started today. And then when you have that cute tracker or, really nice fun pens and stickers and, stamps, that's just going to add to the appeal of doing it. But don't wait until you have the stuff to get started. The principle is the most important part. And you may want to also communicate that you're going to be trying out this method of stable rocks with family members and friends, setting really clear boundaries and protecting those controllables. Once your family and your friends know, hey, it's really important to me that I get my workout in every day. That is the thing that makes me feel really stable when shit's hitting the fan. They're going to help be able to support you or understand when you say, hey, I can't go out and have dinner with you tonight. It's really important to me. I go get my workout in. They're going to understand that a little bit better. And it's super common when things start to get crazy, we can get a little thrown off and we might want to abandon ship or go back to that bracing mode that we're just used to and I described a little earlier, right? And our friends and family will be more likely to be able to notice when these things start to happen, when we want to abandon ship, and help us refocus back on our stable rocks. They may come to you and be like, hey, I've noticed you haven't been going to the gym lately. Like, I know that's really important to you. It makes you feel more relaxed, makes you feel a little bit more in control. How can I help you get back on track? That type of thing. And when should we be implementing our stable rocks? We talk about using them when things are chaotic, right? When things are most chaotic around us. So that's when we think, I'm going to really need it then. But it can be a lot easier to do it when things are tough if we've already implemented them when things are less chaotic. So obviously we're going to want to use this when things feel the most shaky and unstable, things like the ramp up and the beginning of a deployment, or just after the homecoming when we're ramping up, or even in the middle of a PCS. But those are the times when we have the least mental capacity, the least bandwidth to now start focusing on, I need to get my workouts in. It's going to be a lot easier for you if you already know what your stable rocks are and you've already implemented them a little bit. So I would encourage you to establish them as part of your life, even in the less chaotic times, and then lean into them a little bit more in the more chaotic times. And if you're going through a chaotic time right now, if you feel like you're on that waterbed like I described, if you feel like I felt, and as you're listening to this, you might feel like it's really impossible for me to do this right now, Grace. I get it. I understand. Maybe just try and implement one or two of the stable rocks just to start to stabilize yourself a little bit and hopefully help you regain a little bit more control and a little bit more autonomy in this chaotic time. All right. So it's not impossible. It's just a little bit more tough. Maybe just focus on one or two things. And once you have your stable rocks established, again, it'll be so much easier to lean into them when you need it the most. So even if you feel like you have them in a pretty consistent routine, there's something about that impending PCS or your partner leaving for an extended period of time that even our most well-established habits seem to get thrown out the window, right? Having your stable rocks written down somewhere so that you can see them regularly, this can be really helpful for those first few weeks of that transition period. This is the perfect time to pull back out that tracking sheet and pull back out those gold stars or those fun, colorful markers and pens that are really appealing to you, for you to be able to reestablish those stable rock activities. Those stable rocks are going to be your grounding tools during moments of overwhelm. So put just that little extra effort into reestablishing them at the beginning of each new season of military life, and that will pay off big in helping to reduce that stress and allow you to maintain some clarity and some direction rather than waiting for the waves to pass, because they're not going to pass, right? And I encourage you to learn to adapt to each of the changing circumstances without abandoning the stable rocks. So it's really important that we remain adaptable. Even though our stable rocks may stay the same, how we execute them and how we fit them into our schedule may have to adapt. And this really goes back to the PCS-Proof method that we talked about a few episodes back. We follow the principle of the stable rocks, but the tools and the implementation may have to change. For instance, if exercising is one of your stable rocks, like it is for me, you may need to switch from working out in a gym in the evenings after work to working out in your living room before the kids wake up in the morning, because you're now single parenting for the next 4 months. This was a big part of my thought process when I created my signature fitness program, PCS-Proof Fitness. I wanted members to be able to seamlessly adapt their fitness program from gym to home or hotel and back to the gym without having to waste time or energy or money hopping from program to program. Adaptability is essential. The principle of getting your workouts in stays the same, but the adaptability of the program changes for members. But the main point is that we adapt. We don't abandon. We keep the principle. So we adapt. We don't abandon the principle. And my last thing that I wanted to talk about when we're talking about these stable rocks and this feeling of chaos and trying to find our ground, feeling anchored in times of chaos, is that I want you to remember that we're all part of this unique club. You're not alone. Even though it often feels like we're the only one on that waterbed getting tossed around, we're all on our own kind of unique waterbeds, but we're all in this together. We all understand that feeling. So you probably, even, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have an understanding of a lot of the things that I talk about in these episodes. And no matter where you're at in your military journey, military life journey, whether you're brand new or you've been in it for a while or you're well seasoned, there are these things that we can all kind of agree on, these feelings that we all kind of have. And one of them is that it really sucks when we feel like we don't have a lot of control over our lives, and that this is one of the major causes of our added stress. So even if you can take this stable rocks concept and just start to think about it, talk about it with your family, with your community, just by doing that, I think that it will help you feel a little bit more at peace within the chaos. And I'll bet that the improvement in your well-being will create a ripple effect that helps to kind of counteract those big waves that are coming at you. And that would feel a lot better, right, than just feeling like you're having to ride the waves that are coming at us. And as I mentioned before, I learned about this concept of stable rocks from a therapist I was working with. And I will say that now, years later, therapy is one of my stable rocks, along with exercise and my softball community and continued personal development. Therapy, in my opinion, is always helpful. Even in weeks when I feel like everything's going really smoothly, therapy always has a grounding effect on my routine. But man, am I especially grateful for it when I already have that established routine in place, when it feels like life starts to create big waves again. And this concept is something that I try and instill with my coaching clients as well. Of course, I love hearing when my clients have achievements or wins that they want to share with me with their health, their fitness, their nutrition, when things are going great. But more importantly, knowing that they can also lean into me when things are not going perfectly, when they're struggling, when they're feeling shame about something in their health and fitness journey. That's when I can actually help them the most. And I try and ingrain that in them, that in a way, I am one of their stable rocks. So my wish for you today is that this episode at least gets your wheels turning on what your stable rocks might be. And I would encourage you just to start making that list. Maybe that's the action step that you need right now, is just start making the list. Maybe in your phone. Just keep it super simple. Of those routines or those activities or strengths that help anchor you and create that really vital sense of stable ground, of peace, and anchors you when everything else around you feels super unstable. And I encourage you, once you have your list, start to narrow it down. Start to narrow it down, highlight, circle, whatever you need to do, those 3 to 5 stable rocks. And then after that, start to take proactive steps to implement them consistently, even if life feels really steady right now. Even if it feels like, I'm fine. I feel less, I don't feel super stressed right now. We as women in military life, whether you're a service member or a spouse, know that things can change with a moment's notice. One minute we feel like we're standing on the waterbed and things are feeling really placid, barely any movement. And then in the next minute, our whole lives can get tossed up in the air as if someone did a belly flop on the other side of the waterbed, launching us up, and the ground we were standing on is now in a chaotic state. Now that you have this technique, your stable rocks, it will help you to be able to quickly deploy your anchors and take back control of some of that chaos. Again, we don't ignore it. It's still there, but we just feel a little bit more in control of it. And by doing that, you'll be able to feel a little bit less stressed, a little bit more in control, and a whole lot more capable of handling all the waves with grace and with resilience. And that's the PCS-Proof way. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the PCS-Proof Podcast. Please help me continue to spread the word about this resource of information and support by sharing this episode. You can even tag me on social media at Grace B Fitness. I would absolutely love that. And if you've not already done so, please follow this podcast. Consider leaving a 5-star review for me so that this podcast gets pushed out to more women in military life who need to hear it. And if you have a system or a resource that you feel like would be a great addition to the PCS-Proof podcast that follows our methodology, I would love to bring you on to share it with our audience. I just opened up applications to bring on guest speakers onto the podcast. So I left the website address in the show notes. Go ahead and go over to the show notes and go to the podcast page and you can fill out the application. I'll be reviewing that for bringing on guest speakers to the podcast very, very soon. And with that being said, I hope you have another great week ahead. I'm so looking forward to chatting with you again in about a week's time. And remember, no matter where in the world military life sends you, together we are PCS-Proof. Adios. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to replace professional advice. The views expressed in this podcast may not be those of the host or fitpathcoaching.com. Moreover, we are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast.